Welcome to Friday, TGIF. It's March 15th, 2024. Well, for a lot of you, you'll be digging out today and into the weekend, especially across many front range and mountain and foothill locations in Colorado, along and west of I-25 up into southern areas of Wyoming. Areas of rain and snow will now be shifting to the southwestern United States. Southern Utah, southern Colorado, and then across Arizona and New Mexico is where the wet weather will move into as that storm continues to retrograde to the south-southwest. But a lot of you are going to be looking at least for another day, it being pretty cold, and upslope conditions will continue for a little bit longer, but the heavier snow is done. As high pressure builds in and we warm up, we'll have a big melt out this weekend and especially early next week. It'll still be a bit on the cool side in northerly flow this weekend, but early next week, Monday through Wednesday of next week, temperatures will rise quite strongly. Typical March weather. You get a big snowstorm, then you have a big warm up, and then you have another storm. Late next week and next weekend, another possible stormy period for the Rockies and the adjacent plains. I think the plains may have a better opportunity for precipitation with this next storm, as I don't think it's going to retrograde to the southwest United States like this one has done. So we'll be keeping an eye on things mid to late next week and especially next weekend across the west for another March storm. Also, at the end of the podcast, there's new information that is out, a new paper released about the impacts of the big January 2022 Tonga volcanic eruption and whether or not it had impacts on temperatures across the globe. I've been not wanting to talk about it because we've had to wait for the science to come out and for folks to research and put the data together. So it takes a little bit of time, but we do have some information to pass along and also a La Nina and an El Nino update for you. Well, a lot of photos coming in and a lot of scenes like this along and west of I-25 from southern Wyoming all across Colorado, especially in those east and northeast facing foothills and mountains along the Front Range, up into Albany, Wyoming, west of Laramie, upwards of 2 feet of new snow. Some locations in the snowy range above Rob Roy Reservoir, the Cinnabar Park snowpack sensor reported just short of 4 inches of water and just short of 40 inches of snow. So that certainly is going to boost the snowpack, and I'll show you that here in a minute. A shot yesterday morning out of Grants, New Mexico of the clouds building and getting ready for it to get wet down there. And here's a shot of on the warm side of the storm. Out on the warm side of the storm, a lot of severe weather last couple of days in the Midwest. Thanks, Taylor, from Columbia, Missouri, for sending that in. It's that time of year. You get severe weather and tornadoes across the South and in the Midwest as we go into changing seasons, and you have snow in the Rockies. I guess it's March. Here are a list of some locations. Here are some locations across Colorado in terms of some of the bigger snowfall totals. This is by no means all of the snowfall totals, but you can see a 48-inch total there west of Aspen Springs, a lot of Boulder County, Colorado, a lot of areas that got 3 feet or more. And that certainly did help the snowpack, especially if you look here in southern Wyoming, the upper North Platte jumping to 108, the Laramie jumping to 111, Little Snake, the Lower Green, the Wind River, all those blue areas, snowpack is doing very, very well. The green area is doing well. We still need something up here. We just have to hope later in March or April into May, things will improve up there, but certainly the central and southern Rockies doing well. Colorado, snowpacks have jumped as well, especially up here. The Colorado at 108. And look at this. This is what we expected, the South Platte to have a big jump because the South Platte drainage is where those big snowfall totals I just showed you ended up. Now these drainages down here will be benefiting over the next 48 hours as the storm, there it is, begins to shift south-southwestward. The storm center now is all the way down into far southern California. A couple of days ago it was up in Idaho. So it's just gone like this, kind of crazy. And the counterclockwise circulation responsible for bringing all that moisture up against the Front Range mountains and foothills. But it's going to settle down into the southwestern United States. And you can see up here it clearing. That's the high pressure ridge that's developing into the Pacific Northwest. And as we go through the weekend, this is today, this is by Sunday. By Sunday, notice the low's still down in Arizona, so it's just going to keep going down there, but that storm is going to gradually weaken. But as the high pressure comes in, builds, the jet stream will grow north. We'll still have some cooler air coming in from Canada into the central areas of the U.S. and the Great Lakes. And this is what the precipitation looks like for the remainder of the storm. So you can see the Four Corners area, even back into southeastern areas of California, into Las Vegas. You're going to have a cold, wet period with snow in the mountains, rainy, cloudy, chilly weather down across the low elevations, and precipitation spreading across many areas of Texas, then stretching out across the southern plains. But up here where the high pressure ridge is building, well, we're going to have fair weather building on in for the weekend, and that's going to extend into early next week. This is the next 3 days of snowfall, so very much going to be helping out the snowpack areas of the Four Corners region. Then, as we get into early next week, this high pressure ridge builds over the interior, and we have warmer weather building on in for the west. Yep, that's the same low in a very much weakened state, but it's still stuck down there. So a weekend warm up that will extend, especially warmer Monday through Wednesday of next week. So that'll melt the snow. That'll get us feeling like spring again. The tulips and the daffodils will poke up a little bit higher, but then we've got this. By late next week and next weekend, high pressure again builds in the eastern Pacific with another strong push of jet stream energy across the North Pacific. So all indications suggest that as early as Thursday and Friday, rain and snow will return to the far west, moving into the interior, and by next weekend, and especially late next weekend into the following Monday, we're likely to see this low here probably try to get itself organized somewhere around this vicinity here, maybe a little bit further east out into the plains, but this is going to likely be a pretty good weather maker once again. I wanted to pass along some new information that has just come out in the journal Nature about the impacts of the Tonga volcanic eruption in January 2022. Just to remind you, this was the gigantic volcanic eruption, an underwater volcanic eruption that occurred northeast of New Zealand in early January 2022. This was a tremendous eruption. Now, it happened in the middle of nowhere, but it did send shock waves across the globe that people could see on their barometers, and it dumped, an estimate is that it dumped as much as the volume of Lake Tahoe worth of water into the high stratosphere. Why is that important? Well, the stratosphere is normally a very dry place. Usually there's very little water vapor in the stratosphere. But this volcanic eruption was so intense that it threw a lot of water above, let's say, levels of 90 to 100,000 feet or more. A lot of times, volcanic eruptions threw their water, their sulfur dioxide especially, and ash into the lower stratosphere can be a cooling effect on the climate. But with so much water in the equation, the radiative properties of water in the stratosphere could mean that the volcanic eruption may have made the Earth warmer. So we didn't really know until we could put the numbers together and do some research. But the end result is that the Tonga eruption actually caused the globe to be warmer. If you read the abstract of this article and this journal paper and go into the details, I highlighted in red here where the important things to point out. Basically, it was the largest perturbation of the stratosphere in terms of water vapor in the observed satellite area, which is basically from the late 1970s. Since the late 1970s, this is the biggest volcanic eruption to put this much water in the stratosphere that we've been able to observe. What happened before 1979, we really don't know. We don't have the data. But it's the biggest since the satellite era. And the end result of the paper is that the water vapor caused a net warming of the Earth's climate system once that water vapor got into the stratosphere and was able to get circulated across the globe. And it likely had other impacts that we're not going to really know until there's more research done. But the end result here, and there's some other papers that are basically coming out to support this, is that it had a net effect of making the globe warmer. Now you take that warmer pattern that developed after the volcanic eruption in early 22, then you put on top of it the El Nino, the very warm water temperatures in the tropical region, you put those two together, and then you get this warm anomaly that happened across the globe here over the last 12 months or so, when there's been a spike in global temperatures. Notice global temperatures were going down right here, and then there was this big spike. So you take that volcanic eruption, you merge it with El Nino, you're going to have a warmer globe. What's going to happen next? And this is something that we're going to watch for you, because the atmosphere and the climate system is extremely dynamic, and the natural response, whether or not it's a response to the volcanic eruption or what's just basically going to happen after an El Nino, is that after an El Nino, you usually see the water temperatures start to cool off, which then has the net effect of making the globe a little bit cooler. And what we are likely going to see now going forward for the next 12 months is that here are the latest sea surface temperature anomalies. I showed you this map earlier. We're starting to see cooling. So the El Nino is fading, and it's fading fast. And the latest prediction that just came out this week, here's our El Nino. It's rapidly decaying, and the blue bars indicate the forming La Nina that is going to be in place. If you look here, basically there's better than a 70% chance of being at least in a neutral or a La Nina status by summer, going into fall. So the El Nino is crashing. The volcanic eruption now is 2 years past, and the prediction of the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Pacific now, with all these squiggly lines here, are showing it to be dropping, cooling off. Now, what is remarkable is if you look at what the modeling is showing of sea surface temperature anomalies from, this is a map for April, for next month. If you compare that to what happens at the end of summer and early fall, it's quite remarkable. I want you to watch what happens here in the Indian Ocean, then what happens right here along the equator. Because the equator region, the Indian Ocean areas, the sea surface temperature anomalies are way up. But look what happens by fall. A huge drop in sea surface temperature anomalies here, and you would expect that here along the tropics going into the La Nina pattern. So there is going to be a major cooling event taking place over a 6-month period from this spring into early fall. One, because of La Nina. Not sure what's going on over here. The model might be overdoing it. The net message here is that the Tonga eruption made the Earth warmer. That with El Nino made everything warmer, but now things may go the other way as we go into the second half of 2024 into early 2025, which means the weather and the climate across North America and the world really could be really interesting to watch to see these changes taking place. Have yourself a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.